Let's get into some questions. In your previous show, you told us that when a person gets killed, both the victim and the murderer go down a level in astral layers. How unfair is it is for the victim? Yes, it is. But it was part of that harvesting program. Now, I don't know whether the incidents recently to do with the binding and the emptying of the realms may change that. It should do. But as it stands now, I don't know the inner details of that. Migration Pact, December 10th at Marrakesh. What's your opinion on this? I've not read that or looked at it, sorry. What will happen in Europe? A good amount of countries have already said no. I presume this is about migration. But what about the ones that are going to say yes? It's not the will of the people, but the puppets, politicians. It's not the will of the politicians either, trust me. Like I said, it goes way above all these globalisation. There's nothing to do with politicians whatsoever. It really doesn't. Is there any way to stop this globalisation? Do we really want to stop globalisation? Or, should I correct that, do we really want to stop migration? Where everyone stays in their own fake borders. There's nothing wrong with people migrating. The problem we have is we've got a perceived cultures, most of which were imposed on us. The Muslim way was imposed on them. The white people way culture was imposed on them. It's not really our culture. The Indian culture is all based on a lie. Because it's actually the Vedic culture that they're promoting. And the Aryans and the Rus. You know, we've been under the divide and conquer for too long. And there's nothing essentially wrong with migration. The problem is the system and the plans behind it. That's the real issue. We have to break down that system and their plans, and that's exactly what we're doing. But unfortunately, the ones that are travelling are not your average everyday person. They're littered with criminals pulled out of prisons, who then go on to do all kinds of heinous acts, paid for, I might add. Yes, they pay for that as well. So then the people in the country is denigrating either Muslims or somebody else who the system wants to blame. But we have to get away from this migrant. Migrants are a problem. Like I keep saying, how can you be an immigrant on your own planet? Legal or illegal? What is your opinion on the Kalergi book? That's their books, not ours. If it's the same one, I'm almost certain it's that Kalergi plan, what they're going to do and what they think they're going to do anyway. What they think and what happens kind of doesn't work anymore, as we've seen. Do you agree that the corporations, private militias and mafia-style scare tactics are a bigger threat possibly than rogue government officials? Yes. These private groups, be it G4S, Citadel, Blackwater, Z, and all the other names are the government as it stands. They are the corporation. The politicians are not operating in a government, they're operating in a corporation. What we're trying to do is restore the real government and get rid of these government services. What happens is a country collects all the money and then gives it to these private malicious security people operating as government services, and they run the hospitals and they run the police, etc., etc., and the just us system. Governments are not running the government anymore. They haven't in anyone's lifetime who's listening to this show. And we have to shut them down. But these people are not accountable. They don't come under the government law. Like most of the 3-letter, 4-letter and 5-letter groups in this country. They're not accountable to Congress or anyone. That has to stop. Will we live long enough to receive manna's help? Most of us will. It depends on what age you are. So many are dying because of the elite's anger response towards the changeover. Can they be stopped before the populations are genocided? Well, they have, because we haven't been genocided. Yes, there's still deaths going on, but nowhere near 90%. In fact, nowhere near the real figure, which was 100%, despite what the Rothschilds and so-called elites think. They were going to get genocided as well eventually. Oops. I'll have more on manna later. Can a energy vampire take people's energy by holding their right hand with a left hand? No. You don't need to hold anything to vampire people's energy. But there may be certain ways. A person having a crisis asked me to hold their hand, and I did, and I was wondering if there may have been more to it, if any. Well, any contact is a transfer of energy, be it love, fear, or violence. So, it's who you interact with. If you're in a field of negative, low vibrational people, it's going to drag you down. And I have a piece on that in the op-ed pieces later. I just cut them out of my life because they were more service to themselves, did not seem to want to listen to reason, wanted to blame me for whatever they could, make me codependent. Yes, that's vampiric. There's lots of info about consciously and purposely manifesting your life. What's the truth about manifesting purposefully? This subject comes up all the time, but as with everything, there's lots of misinformation. That's subjected to the self. It's up to you how you manifest your life. Mixing with people of low vibration is not going to help that. Having greed, not need, also doesn't help. It's like everyone wanting to manifest winning the lottery. Well, not everyone can win it. In fact, I would suggest most of the ones who do win it are all parts of the elites one way or another, so they keep all the money. They don't want us commoners having money and getting into their circles. But the manifestabilities over the last 4 years has increased. But have people used it? Largely no. It's up to you. I've been talking with people about the projects and they have submitted and just getting a generic response back, because that's all the time allows. Once the funding comes through, they will all be contacted and all proposals will be looked at. In order to keep my Australian politicians honest, yeah, right, I'd like to know how much Kim gave him back in UN fees. Any chance of getting any details on this? No, that's private between the countries and the trust. I see Kim and Anna von Reitz were attempting to work together behind the scenes. I also see Anna is back at her old game, calling Kim this and that. And again, it leads me to believe that Anna tried to get something and didn't from Kim, and now they are not assisting one another. Can you enlighten us on this? I've covered all this several times in several shows. Anna asked for 1/3 of America's in-ground resources, in alliance with their Bohemian Grove partner, Michael Young. Kim refused it, obviously. That was going to the Vatican and also to the Chinese elders. As per usual, Anna won't answer those questions. She only likes to throw barbs out and hopes some of it sticks. Well, none of it did. What, if anything, do you know about the Rothschilds getting out of the trust business? Well, they're not involved in the main trust anymore. They were a heavy part of the trustees, with their family having more reptilian DNA than any other family on this planet. Now they don't have any say in it, much to their chagrin, and that's why they're failing. Lots of soul, and they're going to be too long to answer. Soul and spirit level questions, and I may get and fit a few more of them in later. Is it an idea to install People's Club trainers all over the world, with each country a native group of the people who educate? We already have. It's called THI. That's the idea of it. We are the People's Club. So, members or listeners. There's far more listeners than there is members. In each country want to get a group together. In each country. Good. You can come up with projects or come up with ideas, and maybe next year we'll have more time to meet up with everyone. But the People's Club trainers are already there. It's THI. The entity referred to as Anne, can she be found? It needs to be located. It seems to have capabilities similar to Marduk and far above its former human paradigm. Seems to have its own private army citadel. Anne's in trouble, whoever Anne is. Maybe we won't wait till 2020 for her announcement. The original's announcement of death, like Bush Senior. Do the provisions of the peace treaty provide protection for Kim and her team? Not really. We do have protection, both our own and outside of that, but not necessarily because of the peace treaty, no. What about the Rothschilds and the other elites whose DNA is largely Draco and reptilian that warred against humanity, as did Marduk. Surely is this not more than just a human problem? Yes, I agree, and it has been referenced to the council. Whilst it's, as Shane admitted on our show on Monday, it's largely is humans who are running this planet now and will be for a long time. But my argument is some of them are running the old program, which has failed, and it can't reignite. That program has ended and it has failed, and they're continuing to run a failed program, which is why the world is suffering. And then eventually that won't be a problem. Drake says he destroyed the direct energy weapons used on California. Hope so. If the elites cannot be stopped till now, how and who will put an end to their agendas? I don't pass comment on plans or strategies or who is involved. Is Theresa May going to be allowed to sell out all the British to the EU? Well, it's already sold out since 1972. That hasn't changed. What they're trying to do is back out, but it's a lot of it is faction games and got nothing to do with the countries. Will Angela Merkel get anywhere with EU countries losing sovereignty? Angela Merkel's times is close to an end also, and she has little or no say anymore. Today, President Trump and Melania left the tree lighting ceremony abruptly. Was that a message sent to Trump with the laser, or an assassination attempt that was thwarted? Everyone is excited about his treason tweet. Are things more dangerous than ever? Yes, they are. Oh, yes, they are. Trump's been in several lockdowns recently because of clowns. Why couldn't we organise a worldwide or even just America strike or sit down for a day only? Well, nothing's stopping you. You know, part of the problem of the Western world, France apart, is the apathy. It's a big problem. People are always waiting for somebody else to do it. Well, if you do that, then wonder why things go on for so long, or what is perceived as going on for so long. The two don't mix. America should have done something a long time ago. The militias should have organised a long time ago. Maybe it will take the French Canadians to do a yellow vest and go right through their country, for it to then filter down into what will likely, given the past history, filter down in the northeast of America, Boston region. They're the Irish, they're the campaigners, they're the protesters, before it then spreads to the rest of the country. You know, why haven't California campaigned? I don't recall, I may be wrong, but all the events that have gone on in California in the last 4 years, droughts, water rationing, etc., never mind having Pelosi and Feinstein walking around, and yet has anyone campaigned? Fire after fire after fire, directed energy weapons, and still I'm not seeing any protest in California. Well, what message does that send? Well, you got to understand, these people have no compassion, no empathy. It's bred out of them from a very young age, basically from day one. They're not going to care. They just want all the people out of paradise so they can claim in-ground resources to keep their game going, like they did in Alaska. If people are just going to sit there and moan about it and not do something, they'll carry on. Maybe we can learn from our enemies. Yes, we are, as Kim says. Provide a nice distraction, put a sleight of hand, get sensors as the wall, rescue Getty, recalibrate or start knocking down the hurtful Gwen Towers. Imagine what one day of inactivity might cause. Well, I don't advocate violence, and I don't advocate destruction, apart from one item. The people of Arkansas. What's wrong with you people? They've put the image of the devil in your backyard, and it's still there. It's like the people of Georgia with the Georgia Guidestones telling them you're all going to die, right in your face, and you ignore it. By ignoring it means we're consenting to it. How can I connect with Kingdom of Mana team members? I'm in Southwest Australia and desire to share the THI Kingdom of Mana info with the heads of many groups, communities and claimed authorities in our region. THI and Kingdom of Mana are no longer together and haven't been since October of last year. It was announced in a show in February, March. We tried to keep it private without public animosity, but unfortunately the Kingdom of Mana group decided otherwise. But THI no longer will mix with the Kingdom of Mana group, as they are working for the Rothschilds. Sorry. I saw a video lately in which people who allegedly were colourblind, after they received special glasses, they started seeing colours. Some of them miraculously knew what the name of each colour was. Are there actually people who are really colourblind, or is it just theatre? I'm colourblind. A lot of people are colourblind. Some people have issues with certain colours, and the most common one is green and brown. Depending on the lighting, it can look both colours to someone who's partially colourblind. There's others who have issues with yellow and blue, or red and green, or red and brown. So it is more common than perhaps you think. Could you please explain the difference with SSP experiences in a recent show you did in regards to the demons and magic? I am an SSP experiencer and have certain recalls of being with celebrities and so forth. What's the difference with this SSP abductions? None really. I don't think I suggested it was different. There is the ET abductions, and there's also the MyLab abductions, which is more to do with the SSP. Maybe that's what you're trying to reference. Mixing with celebrities and so forth suggests you were in the Monarch program, and that takes a lot to back out of. there's a number in the alternative community, both as listeners and also as guests, who have been in that Monarch program. And yes, I've heard all the stories of becoming sex slaves for certain celebrities, etc. A bit like Britney Spears. She was a Monarch girl and tried to back out of it, and you saw what happened to her. Well, you don't think it was her that shaved her head, do you? No, it was them. It's a more common problem than people realise, and I know that only too well this year. Have the Pacers been affected financially now? Yes, they have. And how much control do they still have? Like the rest of them, not much. It's more of an illusion of control. Will clones and or AIs be removed and sold elsewhere? Well, a lot of the clones are breaking down, and because there's not as many factories anymore, the desire to replace them is not as prevalent as it used to be. Of course, with the infighting between the factions, replacing them is not something the higher order wants to do. They want to eliminate them all. You know, we did a show, was it 18 months ago? May have been 2 years ago now, where I read out the letter that the Illuminati were down for being extinguished. They thought they were all so important, except they're not. Just slaves, like all the military generals. And Kissinger told you all you were slaves. You didn't listen. Were organic souls installed, merged, infused, escorted in, aka walk-in, whatever those words are, into clones and or AIs to innovate them to look and act like humans? Do they have souls? Well, there is possession of the organic souls. It could well be that there's far more organic souls than perhaps has been put out. This plays into the synth issue. But there's a lot of entities in here that are soulless for whatever reason. A lot of it dark magic and bad practices. They swap themselves out for other entities to play, and those beings are not nice. The clones is something separate altogether from walk-ins. The walk-in was a living entity once. It's just reanimated itself in your vessel. The clones are synths in essence. They may look human, but they're operated by a chip and a computer. Where are we? I haven't got too far into it. I'll wait for time. A couple of more. I may have to ask people next week to not put any questions, because it's going to take me another week to go through them all again. I answered that one. How much power does still exist within the elites and the UN in the EU? The UN is defunct and is operating under false pretenses, and The sooner countries realise that and stop participating in it, then we can get a substitute UN that operates for and by the people and not for and by the Rothschilds et al. But the current defunct UN is basically a bully body operated by the Rothschilds and the fake Chinese elders. Their power is much reduced. They only have the illusion of it. And fear. During a recent visit with my twin brother, he became increasingly hostile and belligerent towards me, which is awful because we've always been very close and loving. He has shown dementia-like behaviour, and people say that his meanness is part of the disease. But I swear I saw a demon in his eyes when he was tormenting me. Well, this could well be what I've been talking about, the possession, the takeover of the vessel. I can't, I can only go on what you said, and that's what you saw, and that's what you believe, aligned to what I've said in the shows, particularly the demons and magic one. It's not as far-fetched as society tells you. Now, how you go about correcting that is rather difficult. Largely, it depends on whether the person is aware of it and can reconnect. Normally, it doesn't end too well, and this is why I warn of magic and all the witchcraft and all that nonsense, because far too many, or far too few, rarely have the knowledge that is required, that goes with it. They think they know. It's like the shamans in America. They think they know what they're talking about. The reality is they don't. You have to learn from the real shamans, which is largely only represented in one country or two, in Australia and New Zealand, and it's about training over decades, not a 12-month course like those in Peru and Central America and the so-called native people in America. You don't learn that type of knowledge in 12 months. You just don't. And they're putting people at risk with these ceremonies and ayahuasca and peyote and all that stuff. We did a show with a lady who had been on her own journey to Peru, and I think it was the second an evening with Thomas Willow Nietsuma. She told you all about the dangers of that stuff. And this is what happens. Drugs and alcohol are another way for entities to enter. Seances and Ouija boards and all the other stuff. It's not good. I do understand why we can't let the United States collapse, as the world may collapse, and although we may be able to support our people, other countries may not be able to do the same. Why let the deep state control the timing of their own downfall, the delaying of Huber's testimony? Well, it's easier from an outsider's point of view. It's not as easy when you're in the front line of it. And this is part of the problem. You never walk in that person's shoes. Well, the environment around politicians and state officials and agencies is badly toxic at the moment. nobody really knows if anyone's got their back. You've got factions involved, you've got private security people involved, you name it. And Rothschilds putting their oar in it, etc. And that's without Clinton and Obama and the Bushes and the Cheneys and the Rumsfelds. I could go on for another hour. All telling this person, you can't do this, and if you don't do this, we're going to torture your children, which is what actually happened to Obama on his inauguration. These people have been in control a long time, and they use threats and all kinds of intimidation. And the investigations are far more reaching than most people realise. It's not about just investigating one item, it's dozens, because of it's like a giant umbrella, and they all come under it, and it's got spokes going off here, there and everywhere, but it's all connected, and it takes time, and there isn't the manpower to deal with the vast amount of investigations going on. And then you've got the drama and fun and games of bipartisanship and all that nonsense. Then you've got the deep state chiming in, the Pentagon chiming in, Langley 2 and 3 chiming in. And that's without the NSA and the Department of Homeland Security and the private groups, like I said. It's toxic, and it takes time. It would be quicker if we issued an executive order and banned all mainstream media news channels. Then things would move a lot quicker, in my opinion. Germany, one of the front initiators of the Immigration Devil Pact, another no. They just blame countries. It's nothing to do with Germany. Please stop blaming countries and blaming politicians. It's all the system. And yes, they are, as you said, will be one of the few that will sign the document in December. My understanding, having learned in your show from Kim, that the UN is not entitled to do any kind of pact or anything else of that nature because it's not sovereign, and that is correct. It's not really the UN that's operating anymore, it's the Rothschilds with Chinese elders and all the other nonsense. It doesn't exist. But they keep it going, and the media tells the people that this is the UN and nothing's changed, when in reality it already has. They're bankrupt. That's why they're trying to get countries to sign up to them, so at the point of signing up, that country has to hand over 2% of its in-ground resources. Stupid Ireland signed up for it. It's just another harvesting program, and it needs countries to stand up to the UN and the IMF and tell them to go and F themselves. Neither are valid, and both of them are bankrupt. But no, that pact is not valid or binding in any way in the real world. In their world of illusion it is, which is what they're still hanging on to. Trump's campaign promise to drain the swamp is neglecting one important element. The evil Khazarian Zionists who have infiltrated our government for almost a century, Present examples are Mnuchin and Ross, to name only a few. And Trump in the last 2 weeks has mentioned that Israel needs our help, and this infuriates me no end. Do we have any future hope of disposing of this malignant cancer state in the near future for the benefit of America and the world? Well, they're going down, same as everybody else. And they will throw Israel under the bus when Israel's ceased to serve their purpose, like Mr. Netanyahu. That's why he's up on corruption and bribery charges, is it not? They'll throw anyone under the bus to keep the system operating, but it's failing. MSM headline story: Stephen Mnuchin is under consideration to become Trump's next chief of staff, but he has indicated he feels better suited at the Treasury. Why is this potential upgrade in his position? Is this administration posturing, or instead demonstrating where the allegiance really lies? Your first 3 words said it all: a mainstream media headline story. We're not pleased that he hasn't been publicly fired yet. Privately he has, but this is part of the standoff and the threats that are ongoing. If you get rid of him, then this will happen. It's like Trump's kind of backed into a corner with Saudi Arabia. There's a massive trade deal with Saudi Arabia. If he suddenly denounces Saudi Arabia, then his jobs and finances are going to be severely hampered. But he's also got people in the administration who are telling him, you're going this way, or we're going to do this. We're going to EMP this state, or we're going to direct energy weapon this state. This is what's going on currently. Is there a real possibility that POTUS could be impeached? And if so, how do you see this being played out? There's always a possibility, but they won't have sufficient votes to carry it forward. Can you please provide any updated timeline, weeks versus months, for fake wealth destruction events, and how transition is going to Manor World Holding Trust curated transactional banking in America and elsewhere? That's a plans and strategy question that I will not answer. Drake said that prices will revert to the 60s. Gas will be around 40 cents and bread at 50 cents, even if the dollar is devalued 30%. And the American standard of living will double. Can you speak about this positive change coming into our pocketbooks? If you want to believe Drake, you carry on. Sorry. Let me. Mass arrests 2 weeks, and still we wait. But no, gas will not be going 40 cents and bread 50 cents. It's utter rubbish. One more question. There's still a fair degree more of that requires more time to answer than I have. Truth or fear porn? With what is coming, should we have at least 6 months of food, water and ammo on hand? Not really, no. If you can afford to do that, fine. Is that a must-have item for that length of time? In my opinion, no. You know, you should always, I've been warning the whole year, always have cash on hand. Preferably a month's. 1 month. Food, again, it's up to you. I don't think we'll get, it's always possible, particularly with the shutdown being imminent if the standoff continues. But 2 weeks, yeah, I said it, Dave, 2 weeks to a month's of food and cash should see everyone through. I think we have enough to correct things within a few days or less than a week, should anything of a more catastrophic nature take place. Final one. I have a question about something you said not long ago about there being, quote, 9 million saviour warriors, unquote, on standby for Earth. I didn't say that. Right, let's have a music break. Do we have a story on... This will lead us in on why I'm going to play this song. New primary school data released by the BBC this week. And analysts suggest it will take 50 years to close the achievement gap between England's rich and poor pupils. If the pace of change remains the same as it has done since 2011, poor pupils will not catch up until 2070, the report shows. 51% of the poorest pupils reached the expected levels, that's their levels, not our levels, in the national end of primary school tests, and this compares with 70% or more of their better off peers, leaving a gap of 19 percentage points. Again, this stuff has to end. There's no way any teaching program should take 50 years to change. That's also rubbish. But when you are educating, and education means training of animals, then it's not a surprise, is it? You are sending your children to the zoo.